All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome on in. This is Dead Cinema Society. So, I haven't done a video review on The Acolyte just yet. Let me actually adjust my lighting here. But I wanted to kind of offer my thoughts on this most recent episode because, truth be told, I'm pretty surprised. I was not a fan of The Acolyte to start with after these first couple of episodes, episodes one, two, three, and four. I thought that this entire project was just going to be utter trash. It was very sloppy. It was poorly written. There were just basic things from a storytelling and a filmmaking standpoint where I felt like this show failed. And I'll go into those details in a little bit as far as like some of my broad thoughts. I do want to do a deeper dive on this show after the season is over. But these last two episodes, and to preface, I'm a pretty big Star Wars fan, really a huge Star Wars fan. Been a big fan my entire life. Um, these last 2 episodes have surprised me quite a bit because as I said, I thought this was going to be just garbage, and the last 2 episodes were fun. I actually really enjoyed them, not to equate that, my enjoyment is necessarily indicative of the quality, but there was a noticeable jump in the quality of the storytelling and how they crafted it. Um just in the last 2 episodes alone. Obviously, last week, we got to see what was a pretty fun, lightsaber battle between our Sith and, Khmer, and the fleet of Jedi that Sol and Jekki and Yord were a part of on the planet of Kofar. And so they go and, they end up meeting up with Khmer in this forest, and things go down and it's pretty fun. It's a great lightsaber battle. Now, comparisons to episode 1 aside, a lot of people are trying to drum that up into drama, whatever. I don't particularly care for that, whether it's like as good or better than. I'd like that's just all dumb to me. I think that this was a good battle. It was a good fight that we got to see last week. And so then we kind of leave off on a bit of an odd cliffhanger where, May is now with Soul disguised as Osha. And Kamir, very intriguingly, now has Osha. My initial thoughts last week for that episode were, okay, Soul, is he just brain dead? Like, has he lost his Jedi senses that he doesn't know that he has the wrong twin with him? The one who has a tattoo or like a more like a branding on her forehead, and whereas Osha had the tattoo on her side. And so, there were things like that. I was just like, okay, we'll see. There's some issues, but still, I really enjoyed the episode last week, surprisingly. And then this week, I kind of went in tentatively. I wasn't sure what to expect because I felt like the first 4 episodes were just not very good, and then episode 5 just came out of nowhere, and I was like, "Holy crap, like, where the writers been for this episode the rest of the series?" Because this was a drastic improvement. And so this week, we pick back up, and I find myself pretty intrigued. We start off with, I believe it was, we see May. No, we see Osha. She's got that bloodied bandage on her side from where, she had fought with May. I did think that was a little odd because we did see Kamir like force heal her at the end of the last episode. So why does she have a bloody bandage? I don't know. Either way, the questions that I think we all had at the end of last episode was, all right, if Soul does not like immediately reach out to the Jedi, this is going to be a canon issue as far as like, oh, the Sith haven't been around for a millennia, as Kiadi Mundi has, famously been pointed out as having said. We've had those debates within the Star Wars community this past week. Um, and so, like, okay, for this to make sense, Soul needs to immediately reach out to the Jedi Order. But then what? Okay, so Soul starts reaching out. The comms are a little shaky, whatever, trying to, fix that situation. But at least, Soul did the smart thing, which again, in the first couple episodes, we didn't always see the characters doing the smart thing. They did kind of whatever was convenient for the plot. Um, we get to see a little bit more of Soul's distress as well. We can tell, like, all right, there's really something weighing on him, and I feel like in a way it's been heavy-handed as far as like, oh, Soul's like, very, very distraught. Like, he's clearly hiding something. Whereas before, I think I would have liked to have seen something in that flashback episode in episode 3, um, some hint or indication to the audience, like, okay, maybe the story's not everything that we were just shown. Something to give us to like question, whereas instead we're seeing just Soul's reaction. Now, that may just be my personal taste, but I feel like we would have had a better setup if maybe we were questioning things starting with episode 3 there, but I don't know, maybe that's neither here nor there. Um Again, I feel like the actress for Vern, forgive me, I'm Venestra, is still feeling a little bit stale. I did not read the High Republic books, so I don't quite know if that's in character, but still, it's just not really translating super well on screen for me. But she did get the news eventually that the whole team is dead. So the Jedi received Soul's message, and they're sending a rescue team. So that again deals with our issue of like, all right, well, Soul's got to immediately contact them. How is this like a bit of information not going to escape and get to the high council? Like, hey, there's a Sith on the loose killing Jedi. you know 7 plus Jedi are now dead. What happened, and how come 100 years later they don't know about the Sith? All right, well, immediately sending out like a rescue team, this is a logical step for Venestra to make. This makes sense. Now it becomes like, all right, well, what happens here? And I saw a lot of people were theorizing that they're going to pin it on Soul, and it seems like they are setting it up for that to happen. Um, I think it's plausible now after having watched it play out on screen that that could be the situation. Um, I'd still be surprised if they ultimately end up in that direction, I guess. Maybe not. Maybe it does make sense. But a lot of people were also speculating that Venestra was just going to cover up the whole issue. So now, because I feel like there is more competent writing, I'm actually very intrigued to see how this plays out. But it's still funny because it's not so much that I'm interested in how it plays out for the sake of the story, but truth be told, I'm wondering how does this play out so that it works with canon, which I will say is not something you want to be one of the driving factors for interest in your show. I I feel like they could have avoided a lot of this mess with like structuring the story somewhat differently before this. Um, I don't know. I think they could have avoided this being like, hey, the Jedi now know about this Sith 100 years before we just heard the Sith have been extinct for a millennia. And so now they're, kind of having to cover their tracks here. And that's been one of the main talking points for the show. Not to mention, you had Kiadi Mundi, the very Jedi who said that in, one of the previous episodes. So he was around for all of this. And it's just weird how I feel like now I'm watching the show from a meta perspective rather than immersing myself in the world. That's not ideal for storytelling. Um, let's see, what other notes? Um, I thought it was interesting how there was that comment about how Soul's mind could be clouded by what he wants to see, or at least that was the implication. That makes sense for his character now. If he is, hiding something, he's really burying something deep. That could explain why he did not sense that it was May that he had with him on the ship. Um, yeah, I was having a lot of problems with the idea of a master Jedi not being able to sense that he has the wrong twin with evil intent with him. But again, this does seem to be a bit of patchwork, and it seems to help out, and allows me to kind of swallow that pill a little bit easier, rather than trying to make up my own excuses in my mind for, like, why that might be the case. I'm actually getting to see it on the screen play out in a way that somewhat makes sense. um Eventually we do have Soul, catches on to May, he stuns her, and then he restrains her. And we get this nice little cliffhanger with their story, talking about how, he's thought about what he was going to say to her for 16 years. And he's like, "You're going to listen." So I'm actually very interested in what he has to say the next episode. I do want to mention the dynamic between Kamir and our other twin. Forgive me for just a moment. OSHA, occupational safety. As some of us like to joke around, but the dynamic between those two is very predictable, but interesting. And I think it's mostly interesting because Kamir seems to be carrying this show on charisma. Manny Jacinto, the actor, his charisma is just oozing onto the screen. He's done superb with this role. I have really, really enjoyed watching him on screen. The nice little bit about the cortosis lore getting thrown in there, that was pretty cool as well. Also, how he's slowly manipulating Osha and, getting her to turn. Like I said, very predictable. These twins seem to be switching sides, but I'm not I'm not like grossed out by it from a story perspective. It's still engaging enough, at least these last couple episodes, that I want to see how this plays out. And I love Star Wars regardless, so I'm going to continue watching whether or not it's good or bad. But I think this show is starting to turn the corner. I think it's starting to get good, and I'm hoping these last 2 episodes, we actually have a decent payoff for this journey that we've had that, really felt out of place and out of touch, that it felt like the writers were just disjointed, that they were constantly fumbling as far as making logical errors with, characters, those characters not making intelligent decisions for the situation, or things that were, again, just convenient for the plot. But I think that things are starting to change. These last 2 episodes have not been as, cringy in my mind as some of the other scenarios that we saw earlier in the season, from the bad dialogue, like, child May threatening to kill Osha. That just seemed so odd and out of place to me. At the time when I watched that, the only way I could rationalize that was, well, maybe May is like, got some mental issues. And I don't feel like when you're watching a show that necessarily you should have to rationalize. It's a show don't tell thing in the story. Um, but again, they have hinted more and more at, like, all right, May's not really all there. I don't know. It's hard to say because it almost seems like we're on the fence with her. But I don't know, that there were a lot of issues that I had with this show in the beginning, and I will get into those in a deeper dive later on after this series is concluded. But again, it started off really sloppy, really messy. These last 2 episodes I've actually enjoyed. I gave them each a 7 out of 10, whereas I think episode 4, I gave it a 5, and the first 3 episodes for me personally were I think I had 2 threes and a 4. They were just not enjoyable for me, but I am hopeful that this series will continue to get better because I prefer for Star Wars to be good. So hopefully that will be the case. I don't know what your guys' thoughts are. Let me know in the comments. If you're new here, we like to do movie reviews and TV show reviews. I like to give things a fair analysis and try and break them down from a critical filmmaking storytelling standpoint. I'm a writer myself, and these are the things that I'm really passionate about is the craft of storytelling. Again, I think the show is starting to turn the corner. I'm excited to see what happens next week and how they finish off this series. But with that, I will be signing off. You guys join Discord. I'll add the link in the description right after this, but would love to chat with you guys. Anyways, until next time.